Welcome back, everybody, to today's episode of The Truth About Addiction. I had such a good time diving into a topic that is really personal to me and something that I'm currently working on in my recovery and just in general in my life, which is to spend less time in my head and more time in my body, and specifically how to hear what my body is trying to say to me, because that's where my intuitive voice shows up. That's where my hunger shows up. And the woman that I'm interviewing has found her life's work in helping other people drop out of their head into their heart and body, and to really listen and honor the call of their body. And we got into it. This is no easy task in the culture we are in and potentially the house you were raised in. So Lauren Clayton is an ex-forensic therapist where she did personality profiling and psych assessments for ex-cons recently released from federal prison. Lauren's interest in neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and epigenetics led her to establishing her private practice in 2010, where she coaches executives and celebrities as an executive leadership coach and an integrative health coach. Her lifelong pursuit and passion is helping her clients upgrade and optimize their psychological, emotional, and physical health, as well as dramatically improve and thrive in their relationships and career. I mean, don't you want to know what she has to say? Because I sure did, and I can't wait to see what comes up inside of you as you listen. Comment, give some love. If you love Lauren, check her course out. We talk about it towards the end. Enjoy the topic, you guys. See you soon.
So tell me what you need, and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Truth About Addiction. I have been given the privilege of meeting this beautiful woman, Lauren Clayton, who is across from me in the virtual space. And we have a mutual friend in recovery who has listened to the two of us talk, not knowing one another, and has been like, you two have to meet. You are the same human. And then we did meet in person, and it was eerie in the best way. And we knew we had to have definitely this conversation and so many others. And so it was actually difficult for us to nail down what we wanted to really excavate today, though we figured it out. Lauren is sober and also is in the health and wellness space in a really meaningful way. She's an integrative health coach. She's an executive leadership coach. And I think the work she's been doing quite a bit lately is what has been speaking to her to want to come on here and talk about. And it's absolutely the work that I have also been doing, in the last few years, especially, which is deeper even than our emotional sobriety, our emotional body, how our bodies are these beautiful vessels that really get shut down over many, many years of cultural conditioning and environmental conditioning and trauma, and not just through recovery, but through so many modalities of healing, right? Psychotherapy, spiritual literature, all kinds of holistic and integrative medicine. You know, we get to rediscover the messaging from our bodies, what our bodies are really asking for. And I can certainly speak from my personal experience that it took me so long to get a sense of a higher power in recovery. And I think it keeps a lot of people out of the rooms. It kept me very sick, even in recovery, for a long time, because I had a mom who deeply hated everything that God, I think the Christian God, stood for, and raised me to believe that the only person I could count on is myself, which meant that I was really counting on my intellect, my perfectionism, my ability to perform to get me through the world, which of course collapses in the face of matters of the heart. And I've come to learn in recovery that it's my body that speaks to me with that quiet knowing. And that is really the compass for my life now. The messaging comes from deep down, somewhere in my belly, and it rises up. And it never comes from the fury of thoughts in my head. And so I'm so excited, Lauren, to have you here and to hear your story, anything you want to share about your addiction into recovery, and then the journey that you're on and what makes you do the work you're doing in the world. And in particular, why this work that we're going to talk about today is so important to you. So please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Sam. And just to continue on what you said, thank you for this opportunity to drop into my heart and in my gut. I was thinking as I was transitioning from client to, being here, and I'm like, oh, what? And I was thinking like, oh, I haven't prepared. And I'm like, there's nothing I can prepare for. Like, I just have to show up. You know what I mean? There's not really anything to do except be a little vulnerable and open my heart and, speak about my experience, just like we do in the rooms. But, I just wanted to, because I've been, how life just does that sometimes. It's like this week or my last a month or a year, I'm being called to be a little bit more vulnerable in the truest sense of the word. So thank you for that opportunity.
My favorite.
Yeah. And also, I love what you said about dropping into your body, and that being, you didn't use these words, but what I heard in a way was your internal guidance system. So that's what my vessel is for. And, a lot of times I was trying to numb that out with whatever, other people, fear, alcohol, like name it, like food. Food was a big one for me, more than anything. And to not be in touch with that. And then therefore to not be as connected or aligned or merged with the divine source, whatever you call a power greater than yourself. I just, it felt like too much for whatever reason. I couldn't connect in that way. And I think also because I only learned this in program, that God, and I grew up Catholic, but God, for whatever reason, and, Al-Anon and ACR are my main programs. And so we have a disease of perception. Perception's off about a lot of things. But somewhere along the way, I started associating God with someone that was punishing, someone where I had to do 10 times, 100 times more than other people have to do to get a monicum of what they do. And that I needed to live in fear of this person called God, and I'm saying person because I was personifying it, and I was projecting all of the things that I didn't like and I feared about other people or maybe my family of origin onto God, higher power. So I was kind of afraid of it. I kind of didn't want to touch it. I'm like, you're over there. I'm just going to be in the corner, just trying not to piss you off. And hopefully, not too many more bad things will happen, kind of thing. And so the beauty of program was being able to rewire that and also really align with what higher power really is, which is just unconditional love, as far as I'm concerned. And I remember one day I was just crying my eyes out in an Al-Anon meeting, and someone walked up to me, gave me a hug. It's just, you know, in program, especially, I could speak to Al-Anon and ACA, just the warmest people. I'm like, I don't deserve this affection. I haven't earned it enough, but okay, I'll take it because I'm just that, on my knees and desperate right now. But she was like, Lauren, why don't you just see yourself the way that God sees you? I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, is that a good thing? Like, I didn't even know. Is it like, oh, well, there's a lot more work to do? And she was just like, no, like, you're just pure love. You're just loved. You're just loved because you're Lauren. And that was a very wild concept. It's like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to perform. None of that. So, I don't know how I went on that tangent, but, something you said inspired it to begin with.
Can you take the audience back to any point in your younger years where some of perhaps the messaging around maybe becoming invisible, being good, you know, pushing your needs aside or abandoning them entirely, because you had to take the temperature of the rest of the room? Like, where did some of that stuff set itself in motion?
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. I want to back up a little bit. I used to be my story. That's all there was. There was no difference between Lauren and my story of victimhood. And it's like, can you believe this happened to me? And I'm just this. And, really over identified. And in fact, that was an addiction in its own, as being so identified with being a victim. And, I don't want to get into like specifics too much. It's like no one ends up in the rooms of Al-Anon because it's like, you know, hashtag goals. It's like, that's something I want to do when I grow up. It's like you get there because you're desperate. But I'll go into more about how I got there. But in terms of like family of origin stuff, without being too specific, like you know, like we all have our trauma, and I had mine, and my perception about how I was raised, like I took events from my life that happened to me, and I associated them with it being something about me. Because this happened, I'm a piece of shit. Because this happened, I'm not worthy of love, stability, security, safety, compassion. But I'll give it all day of me and not abandon me. And please don't, you know, that whole thing. And it also goes into, in Al-Anon, there's this joke that, we do a fifth step on a first date. And if you don't know what the fifth step is, it's like where you kind of like bare your soul and you go over all your character defects or defaults. And to someone that does, it's like inappropriate, you know, because to create this false sense of intimacy, I used to do that all the time. But, yeah, I was thinking about that, like family of origin stuff. So I'm not going to be like too specific about it, just because I don't know if it would be kind of like hurtful, but, you know, there was a lot of room for improvement in, how I related to people in friendships, and then later in romantic relationships. And I just remember this one time, like literally on the floor crying, because of a fight I had with the boyfriend at the time. And I'm like, how did I get here again? How does every relationship end up like this? Like chaos and alcohol being in the center of the relationship, and, you know, either cheating or I'm worried about cheating, or just like this anxious attachment, like don't leave. Who do you want me to become? I'll do that. Just don't go anywhere type of thing. And drama anyway. In ACA, we say, we have an addiction to excitement or fear. And that's what I found it in people, you know, like, I have a lot of friends from AA, our drinking program, and then they would talk about some of the things, like, I've done this. And I was like, I do that. I've done that sober, like without, like, because I have an inner drugstore inside of me that is very, it's a dangerous place to be. And so, yeah, so I'd get in all these relationships, and I'm like, and I would just hit rock bottom, or I thought a couple times. And so particularly after this one relationship, I got right in another one. I'm just like, okay, let me just, and the guy I dated was, he had, again, alcohol was in the center of our relationship. And I wasn't pleased with his drinking. Let's just say that. So, we break up in this kind of very chaotic, traumatic, amputating way. So there was no detaching with love. It was like a F you, da da da, never block, block, block. There was no detaching. I didn't even know what detaching with love was. And so, and then almost 2 weeks later, I got in another relationship. And this guy was sober. And I'm like, okay, are you in AA? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is just going to solve all my relationships problems because this guy's in AA. Like, got it. I got it together. So happy. And even though he wasn't drinking, like in a lot of ways, alcohol and para-alcoholism were in the middle of our relationship. And it was just the same stuff without anyone taking a drink, really. And so he suggested that I go to Al-Anon. He's like, oh, I'm an AA. Why don't you go to Al-Anon? And I was just like thinking to myself, here's the dialogue in my head. Okay, F that. Like, I'm not going, really, like, that just sounds horrible. But the part of me, the codependent, anxiously attached woman that I was like, of course, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I will do. And because I am the perfect girlfriend and I am just, of course I'll go. And so I went and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know. I just have very judgmental thoughts in my head. Like, they're whining, get over it. And I'm so woke because I have an advanced degree in psychology and I've done counseling around this and I'm good and I help other people with this. But for whatever reason, well, at that time I was going just to like prove like what a great and awesome girlfriend I was. And then,
did you have any conscious awareness that you were doing that to please him?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And in fact, I then started to not like that he wasn't going to enough AA meetings. So I weaponized Al-Anon and I was just like, oh yeah, I went to 2-3 meetings this week. How many did you go to? Oh, none? Interesting. And I'd be like, oh, look at my literature that I have. Oh, you don't have any? Interesting. And it was just, it was so bad.
Oh, what a good Al-Anon.
I have no idea that like that, how manipulative that was. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just looking out for him because, you should be going to meetings. It just so unaware of how managing and manipulative that was at the time. That's what I was unaware of. But, it's to the degree of like how sick and unhelpful that was. I didn't understand the gravity of that at the time. I just was like, yeah, I'm being a good girlfriend. You should do that too. And so, but something in me, like, I kept coming back. I kept, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't getting something out of it. And so I kept going and I would sit in these meetings at first and I was like, you know what? Like, Al-Anon is re-traumatizing me. I do not talk like that, but like, I'm just saying it for an effect. Like, I was like, I just feel like I'm going to these meetings and I'm starting to cry. Like, what is this like welling up of like, what's going on? It's re-traumatizing me. And it wasn't re-traumatizing me. What it was doing was creating a safe space for all of this unprocessed shit I hadn't dealt with. That was in parts of my nervous system, like, subconscious, unconscious, like all these things I just hadn't dealt with. There was a place to just like shed a few tears about it at first, And then with the guy that suggested I go to Al-Anon, we broke up. And I knew it was a good idea, but I couldn't like, part of me was just like the anxious attachment stuff was just like, I did not want to let that relationship go as much as I knew it wasn't serving me. And I really leaned into Al-Anon and felt like it, in a lot of ways, like saved my life. Like I was able to like, at least still, I was so heartbroken and like in the depths of despair, but I was able to, go to work and also receive like love and just compassion and affection from people that didn't even know me that well. They just were like, keep coming back. You're in the right place. And it was, and slowly, day by day, minute by minute, I did get better. And another thing that kept me coming back was I heard that Al-Anon is like getting a master's degree in relationships. And I'm like, oh, I'm so down because I knew I needed that. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I will stay for that miracle. Okay. And then people say ACA is like the PhD of like, cause if you were to think of it like a funnel, like the alcohol and narcotics, like all of our other programs, which are so wonderful and so amazing, like it kind of all could for you, like it does for me, channel into childhood trauma and dysfunction, right? No matter what it is. And trauma is subjective. Something that might have affected me one way doesn't affect someone else another way. So, but my perceptions around things, there was lots of opportunities for rewiring, which the program al-anon and ACA particularly have done for me. So, so grateful for that. And I continue to get rewired every day.
Was there a moment, I'm sure there were many, but like, do you have a particular initial moment in working the steps where you had like a radical new perspective where you were like, wait a second, because, you know, I'm in AA, but I'm also very much an al-anon, and I had so many moments of awakening, but the one I identify with so much in terms of relationship is when my marriage was falling apart, because I was, you know, telling him, you better you need to go to Al-Anon. You need to, and then he didn't. And I realized I had absolutely no sense of self-worth, none. And I can picture, you know, for the other untreated Al-Anons in the world, right? You love somebody to a fault. You abandon yourself at the expense of someone else's needs. And you think that that's love, and you realize without that, you don't know who you are. And that can be a very scary place of reckoning. And so, you know, you're in these rooms, you're broken up with that person, and you keep coming back. And so it sounds like these other women are loving you, even if you don't love yourself yet. And at some point, you've got to start picking up tools, right? And there has to be something that starts to happen, like a click. And for me, it was this sponsor in Al-Anon and AA who said, have you ever made an amends to yourself? That was the moment of reckoning for me, where I was like, no wonder I can't be with myself, because when I'm with myself, it's just a guilt and shame shit show. And it is intolerable. It is absolutely intolerable. So then in order to clear that away, I had to get into a deep, deep practice of forgiveness and compassion towards myself. And that was the beginning of me, first of all, like truly getting to know myself, but also back to like what we're going to really dive into, me hearing the whisper of quote unquote God from inside of my body, because that was such horrifically heavy clutter that was sitting on top of that vessel. Yeah. And I always think like the visual inside of my body, when everything is clear and I can get the divine messaging, is like my head and my heart and my gut are like 3 blocks. And when the light can go straight through and then straight back up, I'm like in divinity, right? And then all day long, every day, there's like shit that comes on top and tries to block the light. Like in my emotional sobriety, right? So now I've spent all these years like decluttering, and then it always, you know, flies back over it. And there's always shit trying to block my light, but I can feel when it's being blocked, and I don't get the messaging from my body. And so like that's my reference point for when everything broke open in terms of having a new experience in my life. So tell me what that looked like for you.
I've had many of those, and I feel so fortunate to, in our, in recovery, we say, you know, at the 12 step, you'll have had a spiritual awakening. I've had many. Yes. I've had many along the way. And so, and that, what you're talking about for me happened right in step 1. And I was sitting in a meeting, and I always bring my journal, and I'm just writing and writing. And then this whole idea of recovery, and I'm writing the word, and it's like, I am here to recover myself. Like, I literally have abandoned myself for all of these relationships, my emotional drunkenness or whatever is, I just end up in these really chaotic situations, sometimes like on the other side of the world, whatever. And I had no idea how much I had abandoned myself for the sake of like the codependence and all of the chaos that I was addicted to. So the biggest one for me, and then the very first one that I had was like, I have completely lost myself. I mean, like, I knew what my favorite color was and I knew what I liked to eat. And that was about it. And I knew that I really liked what I do for a living. And, that's all that was in front of me. And it's like, I have so much recovering of myself to do. Like, wow. And it seemed very daunting. I'm like, that's a lot of work to do. And like, how did I end up here? Type of thing, but I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to just show me the way, higher power, and I'm willing to do the work because anything has got to be better than being here. And then another big spiritual awakening I had was realizing kind of what I alluded to earlier, that my higher power isn't my parents. God isn't my parents or anyone that has done me wrong or created trauma in my life. That is not who my higher power is, which I now mostly refer to as source. And so like source is the source of unconditional love, stability, security, and always, like, all of those things are what God and source is. It's not anything that's not that. Let's just put it that way. So, and that was a big thing for me because it's like, I was able to get closer to my higher power. I was able to understand that some of my negative thoughts and things that were ruling me in a way were just in what ACA we call the critical parent. And so it's like, okay, that's not me. That's the critical parent. That's just unresolved trauma. That's stuff that's trying to keep me safe. That's old embedded wiring. That is outdated software that used to run well when I was a kid and used to keep me safe. And that was okay. But now in 2023, it's really not working that well. It's old, it's janky, it's, glitching. And so I can't do those old survival patterns anymore. Thank you for helping me, but we're all good now. Like, you can go rest, old software / critical parent, and let you just do your thing over there. Maybe, do a new update or whatever. So, and then the thing about making an amends to yourself, man. Okay. So in Al-Anon, that was like the first 9th step I did. And I felt like it was easy. So I'm one of the Al-Anons that's like, I'm not defensive, or I'm the opposite. I'm like, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm a piece of shit. I am. And I will tell you too why I am a piece of shit all day long. The whole this is the Al-Anon salute, the back of your hand over your head. Like, oh, I had the Al-Anon salute down. I was just like, and I've in what I do for a living. Like as a coach, I ask people to, the parts of themselves that they don't like, or the malignant, the parts of yourself that aren't serving you, like, personify them and make that a person, because that is not you. That's not your highest and best. They're just old, default, and so mine is called Lorena, and Lorena is like always like this. Everything is drama. Everything is overwhelming. Everything is the telenovela. Everything is victimhood. So when I did the 9th step, I was just like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm going to make the 9th step my bitch. And I was just and I wrote all these beautiful 9th steps, and not to flex or not, I'm not even, I just don't want it to sound like that. But I got feedback that that's some of the, one of the most beautiful 9th steps I've ever received in my life. Cause I was just I will take response. But when it came to doing a 9th step for myself, that was the hardest thing I ever did. That was a lot of tears. That was a lot of opportunity for emotional regulation and to really show up and be vulnerable with myself and to be raw and honest and still somehow unconditionally love myself. I don't know.
How did you make a start? The first time you tried to making amends to yourself. How did you do it? Did you look in the mirror?
The very first time
Yeah.
the very first time I just couldn't do it. I was just like, my sponsor was just, oh, make an amends to, and I'm like, no, because I could have done better. I'm a piece of shit for not doing it. Like, no, the answer is no. Like, it's a hard no. And I'm not into, and I was fighting the program. And so I'm like, I'm not into this whole like self-indulgent, we're going to forgive ourselves. No, I wasn't punished enough or whatever. Like, I need to punish myself more for the mistakes I did. So that's a hard no on making an amends to myself. And my sponsor was like, okay, we'll revisit this later when you actually get to your 9th step. But so, yeah, when that was suggested to me in the beginning, I was like, no. And so, oh, sorry, let me turn my phone off. So by the time I got to my 9th step, I was still very scared, but at least it was replaced with this vulnerable, like, I'm scared. And like, I was just like, to my sponsor, I'm like, I just need to hold your hand through this process. I need, and that's what's so beautiful about recovery in the rooms is that there's no, just to guide someone through recovery. There's nothing transactional about it. No one's getting paid. People will just show up and love you and help you through this spiritual path, just to be of service. And so I just little by little started to write it out and like cried my way through it. And just, it was so much grief that came up. And that's the thing about being in recovery and this spiritual path and growing up in any type of dysfunction or alcoholism is that there's so much grief attached to it. And a lot of it is conscious and a lot of it's unconscious. And there's layers of it. Grief isn't obviously like a straight linear like trajectory, but a lot of grief that I had forgotten about. And like this girl that I'm like, who did that? I was grateful to be looking back on some of my behavior and some of the things that I got to apologize to myself for and be like I've just changed so much. In recovery, we talk about being a woman of dignity and grace. And I've added a few things to that, dignity, grace, love, peace. And I can say now, and with a lot of gratitude, that I am embodying that more. But when I, was doing those things that I was apologizing to myself for, I wasn't any of those things. I didn't know how to respect myself. I didn't know how to love myself. And I was doing the best I could with the tools I have, which were not that many. But yes, when I got through the amends with myself, that was a huge deal. And it did feel like a weight was lifted off of me. And also like my body like shifted. I think like internally or in my nervous system, I wasn't carrying around so much stuff. And like my set weight like shifted downward a little bit, like, or my metabolism, something happened. And when I've done a lot of deep healing work, I need to sleep for a long time. So I know that things are happening on like a spiritual and cellular level. I mean, they are for all of us, but if you're more aware of it, I think that it could also have a bigger impact, but without me doing anything. And this is someone I'm like, I would always not freak out, but be very like concerned about my weight or, appearance or how much I ate or, or didn't eat, all of those things. And it just got taken away, like this, what I would call drama around being so focused on, only being a certain weight and only eating certain things. It went away because I wanted freedom from that. And I'm like, you know what? Higher power, source, I have things to do in this world. You gave me this life to live out my dharma, live out my purpose. And I'm pretty fucking sure it doesn't involve counting calories and worrying about food and like not trusting that this completely healthy body that you gave me isn't working right or isn't metabolizing food. I'm pretty sure I didn't come here to sit on my ass and worry about that. So please remove that from me. And so in my 9th step, a lot of that just got removed for me. And I don't know, my body is like functioning and healthier than it's ever been. And, I have like a lot of things, like I had fear around like digestion and because of narratives that were told in my family about, oh, we have this that runs in our family. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put down that narrative. I'm going to put down that transgenerational trauma. I'm going to put down that story. That's not me. And I get to choose that. So, cause a lot of this stuff is about like epigenetics and like things that we can rewire and turn off. And I'm like, I get to be healthy. I get to have emotional sobriety. I get to actually internally, like with my physical health, be healthy. And so, I got all of those things. In doing a 9th step, I wasn't expecting that, but it just dropped me more into my body. And earlier we were talking about this, about just like enjoying food without all of this, like the narratives and the fear around like food and our body and all that, what's going to happen if we eat this or indulge in that over there. It's like, my body knows what to do, just like God or my higher power knows what to do. So just let it do its thing. But, we were talking earlier about you just got back from your.
So many things to say. Wait, we're gonna get right to that. Hold on. I wanna.
Okay.
So for a second, like when you touched on grief, I feel like it's very possible that someone could be listening to this, right? And hear about making an amends to yourself. And then hear the word grief and be very confused. And I just want to say for a moment that I am a hardwired perfectionist, A, and B, I grew up in a house where much of the validation came externally. So the thinner I was, the better. Mm-hmm. The more A's I got, the better. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then you couple that with my hardwiring, and in between my ears was this relentless, never enough, not thin enough, not smart enough. It was just a pressure cooker. So then you get to this point where now you're bottoming out over living that way. And you have to learn how to be in true communion with yourself, which means if you're going to do it soberly and mindfully, you're not going to survive it if all you're doing all day long is saying you're a fucking piece of shit. So you have this moment and you're forgiving and trying to learn to love yourself. So why is there grief? Shouldn't that just be elation? Shouldn't that just be, and yes, there's a lot of beautiful things that start to happen, but when your entire sense of self was wrapped around how perfectly you looked or you did things, and you're now at a place where you have to untether every single one of those things because it's not working. You're also grieving an identity mm-hmm. that was in every fiber of who you were. So it's terrifying mm-hmm. to let it go, because that was your sense of safety in the world. Because if everything was neat and orderly and you were thin enough and you were smart enough and you performed perfectly, then everything was in control and everything was fine, quote unquote. So you're not just grieving who you thought you were and how you operate in the world. You're also grieving how you knew to feel safe in the world. So as you're letting that go and you don't yet have this deep communion with yourself, you're in fucking emotional limbo, and it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. So, I just think it's so important to sort of like expand on why there is grief in a moment that otherwise might look like there should just be peace.
Say that again. Wait, say that again. Like you froze, at least on my end. Why there's grief?
Well, yeah, I think it's so important to let people know why there's grief. Mm-hmm. And for me, as you're coming to a place of self-compassion and forgiveness, which appears like it should be beautiful, like mm-hmm. triumphant even. And it is. It is. It's also heartbreaking.
It is. I think after, after the processing and maybe in step 10, the beauty, and even into like 12, like I could feel the effects of making an amends to myself. In that moment, it was just a lot of messy grief. And my grief, I understand what you're saying about like that whole, like, well, who am I if I'm not these behaviors? But I was so desperate. I was ready to give up the behaviors because they weren't keeping me safe anymore. They weren't doing anything. They were just making everything worse. It was, what we call insanity. Like if you're trying to cure alcoholism with alcohol, I was trying to cure the perfectionism with the perfectionism, and it just wasn't working for me. So I was just like, pace, like I was over, I was not under it anymore. Like I was just very over my old ways. And I was like, I will do anything, get me the old, but, and so that is a big piece of what we grieve, like when we're recovering, especially in emotional sobriety. Sorry about that. Over here in the mean streets of Santa Monica, the, and I live by a firehouse. But for me, the grief came from, because I have a huge addiction to shame and fear that I wasn't aware of until I got into program. So when I opened that up, it was kind of like, I get to just grieve this woman I used to be without the shame and fear, like shame and guilt attacking me. And that's where the tricky thing was for me. And just, can I just grieve the fact that like, I didn't know any better then without the shame like overtaking me. So I understand that piece too of like, what is my identity? And I guess like with identity for me, like, in terms of in many areas, like I just kind of hold on loosely. I'm kind of like, okay, here's my ideal. Like I've been thinking about a lot of like what I want a romantic relationship to look like. And I'm like, here's the, my standards in my container, but I'm just going to hold on loosely to that because I think, my higher power could come in and not aware of. And then the same thing with my practice at the time. I was like, okay, well, I know I love being a coach. And I was so grateful for that because you do meet people in the rooms who that like tower just comes crumbling down. And it's like, I don't like my job. Which is like, we're there for that. Like your fellows will support you. Like, and I don't know what I like to eat and I don't like da 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 da. And I mean, in relationships, I've had that too, that coming to America moment, like whatever you like, whatever you like. Like I remember when I first saw that in Coming to America with the queen is just like, oh, I like whatever you like. And like, I didn't even understand why that was funny. It's like, yeah, that's what I just do with guys. It's like whatever you want type of, but even though I did know what I wanted, I just wouldn't, because I don't have needs, right? I'm so perfect. I don't have needs at all. But like, yeah. So I do feel very fortunate that when, I hit my bottom and then doing that amends to myself, I did at least have that part. I was just my opportunity for spiritual growth and personal growth came from not being taken down by the shame and guilt. And we, that's one of our promises in Al-Anon. It's like we can understand the vastness of all our emotions without being a slave to any of them. I was just a slave to my emotions. They were just, I don't know, they just controlled me, And so that's where that comes in for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting to talk about these nuances. And also I really also want to dig, because this is perfect to get into the food and body and messaging from our bodies and stuff like that. It, for me, is like wild to imagine doing a ninth step and having the kind of body freedom that you described. I mean, deep into my sobriety is when I first got really confronted with the layers of toxic messaging that I've consumed since I was a little girl around food and body. I don't think, not only would a ninth step or any one of the 12 steps, as profound as they are, cure me of that. In fact, I believe for me, I will be recovering from that messaging for the rest of my life. And I'm so curious, like, it's probably impossible to answer this, right? But if as you were recovering, if your body's default had been to put on 20 or 30 pounds, because when you actually, and by the way, when we use the word indulge for whoever's listening, it's in quotations. And right, because actually it's the most sacred, incredible act of revolution to indulge in your actual fucking hunger, especially when you're a woman. So just so that everyone's real clear that we say that with like very tight quotations. So do you think part of why your transition into body acceptance has been quicker or not as complicated, perhaps? I don't know if any of that's even true, but just based on the little that you said, it feels so like I envy that so badly. Like there's just, I struggle daily with this. Do you think it's partly because you'd fit into the beauty and body standard really, really nicely when you're letting go?
When I'm letting go? What do you mean?
Right. Meaning when you're just in total, yeah, I am going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm not going to weigh myself. I'm not going to count my calories. I'm going to have body freedom. I'm going to have body liberation, no matter what anybody has said to me before that. How much easier do you think that is, knowing that you fit perfectly into culture's idea of what is beautiful? Because by the way, you guys, if you can't see her, Lauren is fucking gorgeous and tall and lean. And I'm being real with you because this is like, right? I mean, I want to speak to me because after.
Wait, hold on.
I'm back.
You want to speak to, that's really.
I want to speak to, now people look at me too, right? I look like I've been fit since I was like 4 years old. And, you know, genetically I have a more muscular body. I've been in shape
and
for.
Also gorgeous. Let's own that.
Let's own that. Thank you. You know, after my children, especially after my second child, I was not in shape and I wasn't losing the weight right away. And I wanted to do all the damaging things to get myself back in shape. And in fact, I ended up doing all those things. I mean, I nearly, you know, starved myself. And much of that happened because my father had passed away and I was absolutely trying to outrun my grief and powerlessness by controlling food and body. So, you know, food and body shit got the worst for me with the most time I had in recovery. And even still, there are women listening to this who would fucking die to look even a little bit like we do, right? Because we look like good little soldiers fitting into the beauty and body standard. And yet here we are, and I feel, you know, tormented by it, although I definitely am able to see the sick parts of me that want to play into it. And I'm so much more capable now of stepping into my power and being like, system override. Yeah. You are fucking hungry. Eat.
Yeah.
You know, you want actual pizza, not cauliflower pizza. Eat. You know, I thank God for that. And then here you are, and you're just like, you know, in this peaceful communion, it sounds like, with your body. So let's just like get into that. Like, how does that land on you when I'm like, what happens if you just woke up tomorrow and you were 30 pounds heavier? Would you still be like, thank you, God, for this divine vessel?
Yeah. Well, and also thank you for saying that about, oh, well, you look like how everyone else wants to look, because I think I had like a big emotional reaction to that I was like, I'm trying to like reel it in, but like, cause
I know, I could see it on your face. I was like, ooh, we're going to hit a nerve right now.
Let's hit it, girl.
Hit it.
But yeah, cause it's like, I don't, you know, and that's part of my grief. Like, I don't fucking think that about myself. I don't, you know, I don't at all.
That's the great joke about all this shit.
Yeah, I just don't. And for the longest time, I mean, even when I was like underweight, I felt like I was 30 pounds overweight, you know? So it's kind of like when you're asking me that, it's like, well, I felt that before and I, you know, had moments where the body dysmorphia was so intense that I felt that way. And then I've actually been 30 pounds heavier than I am right now. So, and when it wasn't a priority. Like I was thinking about other things. I was probably, I was in some chaotic relationship or trying to get by in grad school, like off of 3 hours of sleep and, doing all kinds of dysfunction to like my hormones, which is where like all of that weight gain came from mostly. And also just bad, like compulsive behaviors around food and alcohol, like none of that like served me. So, having been 30 pounds heavier than I am and probably maybe 15, 20 pounds thinner than underweight. It's all been about where my emotional sobriety is. And yeah, that's kind of like the root of everything. To answer that question, it's like, well, would I be more dissatisfied? And then the other truth is, for me, it's a reflection of what is on the, like I've had times where I'm just so worried and not eating and I'm puffy as fuck because it's like my body is going to like let me know what's up, through my nervous system, and my body is just going to, let me know where I need to dial it in, with my emotional sobriety when that happens. So, yeah, it's been a good guidance system for me. And, I do have some, I guess, what can be like, it's really popular to say like imposter syndrome right now, or, and in 12 step, we think of it as like hiding or not hiding and biting, under earning, like they talk about in some of the money programs. But it's all the same thing. Is this like shrinking down to make other people comfortable. And so, yeah, like I feel like when you said that about, oh, well, you fit the beauty standard, I was like, no, I don't. Not at all. Not in the least. Like you know what I mean? Especially when, the hair extensions aren't in and like the hair is just, or whatever, the makeup's not on. I'm like, I don't at all. I don't know what you're talking about. I have stretch mark, like that whole thing. And so, but cause I feel like I have a desire to be like, I want to be that. I want to be like the people that I think fit into I'm like, I want to, and so, but just an awareness that people might see me that way it's like triggering. And it's kind of like, then I'm like, oh, well, let me just drop the mic. Who am I to, be coaching people on this? If that's the case, I'm just going to leave it up to, you know what I mean? Like all of those things come up. And, that's an example of like my guilt and shame addiction attempting to take over, like in real time. That's what it looks like, so.
But I love guys, this is like fucking real time back and forth shit. Like it's so good. And I think the beautiful part of what we're getting into right now also is that neither you nor I believe we fit into or belong in that fucking make-believe beauty and body standard. Despite, our best efforts, despite, whether we're the good little soldier who's lost all the weight, who looks just like the girl in the magazine, or we're 30 pounds above it, we never feel like we did it. Yeah. We never feel like we landed there, which goes back to why you are so fucking qualified to do the work you're doing. Mm-hmm. Because that whichever way you've gone, totally into pity and shame and blame, or all the way into, I've abandoned everything about this beauty standard. I trust my body. You've seen it all, mm-hmm. and none of it works. And so all you can do is like moment to moment, meal to meal, message by message that your body is sending up to your mind. Try to honor it and try to listen to it and try to live by it and be a truth teller about all the mess in the middle. And I think could you imagine if some of these, Kim Kardashians of the world ever actually came out and said, I don't ever actually feel beautiful. Mm-hmm. What would that do? That level of transparency and vulnerability. I think that's I think that is exactly why you're perfect for the work that you're doing. And I'd love to know what you have to say about that. And I also want to know, like, what are some of your practices, just like a couple things that you do every day to kind of get into your body and
Okay,
to
wait.
hear
Yeah,
what
no, I definitely want to answer that question, but I just remembered I didn't answer your other question that I thought was like it definitely deserves, because you were saying that you feel like you're always going to have this. And then like, where did I get that freedom from? I do want to honor that question too. And I also want to just invite you, because I've had moments, I had a lot of moments like this where I'm like, this is going to be my life forever. I remember specifically driving to the grocery store and being like, you know what? It's just going to be this struggle with me and food and my body. It's just going to be this bad triangle back and forth all the time. And I'm just going to have to live with that. And I just got to a point where I'm like, no, I don't know. Maybe I just, how dare me to think that, but it was just too exhausting and I couldn't do it anymore. And I love cooking and I love, it's a way to connect. And I love, you know, going out with friends or going on a date and like connecting that way over a meal. And I didn't want to rob myself of that anymore. And I didn't want to not be healthy. I, in some parts, at least my perception was in some parts of my childhood and relationships I had, like I wouldn't be hurt if I was sick. If I was just small and sick, you take care of me. I wasn't going to get like physically or emotionally hurt because I was just so like, I've shrunken down and I'm kind of incapacitated right now. And the same thing with like being like insecure about, or like maybe not wearing like exactly what, cause I'm just like, oh, and I was like, I'm sick of that. I'm sick of that. I want to experience like life to its fullest. And so I was willing to make that trade of like, and I just was like, I just asked to be divinely led. And I'm like, I don't like how this is going. I don't want to. And then I got really into the divine feminine and I'm like, I want to be completely sensual. Like what I mean by that is in my senses, like fully like taste, smell, be so present with everything. So everything's like, I'm living in like, part of Wizard of Oz where everything's in Technicolor. Like I want my life I want to be that way instead of like numbing out while I'm eating something or like drinking enough. So I'm just like, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm just like a little tipsy. You know what I mean? So I could have the pizza when I want to, because otherwise I wouldn't let myself do that. And I don't really drink, especially in the last whatever, like I just haven't been, but back when my emotional sobriety was not as intact anymore, I would use that to either numb my feelings or to I would use alcohol to either numb my feelings or give myself permission to eat. And so, I'm still not grounded in my body. I'm halfway somewhere else when, at least when I'm drinking, it doesn't matter how much or little it is. So I just wanted a better experience. I'm like, shit, I have to eat at least a couple times a day. So, like I don't have to drink. I don't have to do it, like, but I have to eat. So, I might as well enjoy it. And I'm sick of this. I'm sick. I'm sick. Like I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I just kind of was like, I'm done. Like I just declared that I'm done and I have no space for this anymore. And it was just like, how we ask ourselves, like, how much joy can you handle? I was just like, I want the joy of just enjoying a pizza and like, or not like obsessing about pizza every day or just having it. Like I had pizza the other day and it was delicious and I just, whatever. And I had leftovers and ate that shit the next day and it was so good. And and it was not low carb. I've written 2 low carb books. The shit was completely carb, like, to the fullest, and it was delicious and I was happy about it. And did I gain a but no, I didn't, none of that happened. I just enjoyed it and my body knew what to do and like, that's it. And that was not the story back in the day, but I was just really desperate enough to put down that. And there's still other things I'm, learning to put down, like around my business and like how I let clients treat me, or just, there's a lot of stuff that I'm still working on. But that one, I was just like, I just made a declaration and then I called in something different and really believed that was available for me. So I wanted it because I feel so passionate about it. It's what I do for work, and like the program that I'm launching, my new online course, it's all about that. Like you can have that freedom, even if you feel like it's impossible right now. That freedom from food, and that it's not even body acceptance. Like, I'm just going to accept this. It's more like body love. Like, I wake up and I'm like, I fucking love my life. I love my body. I'm just so like, I have that, which I've never had before. And I know that that's available to everyone. And it's like, if you don't believe that now, I'll hold that space for you, because it is. So that's
okay. So yeah, we're gonna, yes. I want you to, we have a little more to discuss, and then I'll ask you the questions I ask everybody, and then we're definitely going to talk about this course, because it's so fucking important, that work. And I love that you like called me on that, because you're right. You know, it's that same desperation when I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be free from not wanting a drink or a drug. That's never going to happen. Even if I stop, I'm always going to wish that I could drink like a normal person. And that's not true anymore. So I think, you know, yours sounds, it reminds me of somebody in early recovery, when I was in early recovery, and I would hear somebody with a lot of time, or somebody who had a more like a rapid spiritual awakening, you know, would be like, the obsession to drink has been removed. And all of the picture is like this Christian God coming above their head, waving a wand and going, you have been cured of your addiction. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So it's like kind of like this conversation right now about body is like, that's where I am. Like, you're the one that's like, you can be liberated. And I'm like, really? But I know that it's true, because I have sober experience of that being true with drugs and alcohol. And I think, you know, to make this tangible for people out there who probably feel very similar, right? Like would kill to feel that kind of body liberation. There's another serious rewiring process that would have to take place. And I've said to my husband, who's been like, what do you think it would take for you to be free from this? Because he can't believe when I really disclose the level of shit that goes on in my head, what I deal with every day. And then he has compassion for women in general, you know, because he just had no fucking clue. Yeah. He's a white privileged man. He doesn't know. And I said, I think I'd have to throw as much at this in the way of a 12-step program, all the elements of working and living a spiritual life, as I do towards my drinking and drugging.
Oh yeah.
And what you're talking about is you hit a wall. So you had the gift of desperation, number one.
Absolutely.
Number two, you made you didn't just hope that it would go away. You asked your higher power to help you drop it, which is a process of rewiring. Help me turn towards my hunger. Help me enjoy my fucking food, because it's my birthright. Now, if I practiced those conversations in my head, between my head and my heart, out loud to my higher power, you know, if I put practice towards body liberation, I would see a difference a lot quicker than touch and go practice or no practice at all. Because what I've practiced for most of my life is playing into the toxic messaging. So I've become very, very good at it.
You just strengthen those neural pathways.
Exactly.
Right?
So we're really talking about like the reason why you know it's possible to have freedom is because it is fucking possible. On a soul level and a scientific level. It is possible.
Right. And even so like if I just could put my coach hat on for a minute, like you've strengthened those neural pathways, and you know, a lot of times those are just second nature or anything. And then you said, I'm good at it, but you could be good. You could be just as good at the opposite, right? Like you can be, it's just as available to you. And by the way, our, you know, the AA got started through Bill W. but he was advised by Carl Jung, who's a famous psychologist. And Carl Jung told him, he was like, this cannot be solved just practically. It's not going to be solved that way. It's solved on the spiritual plane, which he was talking about rewiring. You know, like if you want to talk about it in scientific terms, if you don't want to, like, if that sounds too nebulous for you, like, because of the same thing, like neuroscience is basically a lot of times, like, really, there's a lot of overlap between that and spirituality, but we'll just go with, you know, that's why I say rewire. But so Jung was like, you need to there's a rewiring process. It's not like, just stop doing that. It doesn't work. You know what I mean? You will stop doing that, and behavior will be like not even just stopping it, but a freedom from it. But it's the rewiring that goes on. And if you give it to your higher power, if you're just like, hey, can you just take over? Which, I mean, it happens. It just happens. You know how people say like, oh, the steps worked me. They do. They work you if you let them.
And I just want to say also, like, part of what I'm discovering in terms of what keeps me sick and stuck and, you know, is that there's a very real threat to surrendering to our bodies and what they want and need. And what I mean by that is our culture rewards beauty and thinness, especially if you're a woman. Okay. We have literally more access to power as it's defined by capitalism, money, fame, external successes when we are thinner and more beautiful. That is a fucking fact. Coupled with that, I am in the fitness industry. I mean, I'm trying to break into an online space and be known so I can generate, yes, money, but also cast a really wide net, right, to who I can help. In honoring the deep needs of my body, all of that could change, right? To the outside world, I might not be as palatable. I might not be as thin. I might not be whatever. I'm not saying that's real power. That's the power we've been taught to believe is real power. Clearly, we know there's a much more deep and true power, which is the one we're talking about, that lives inside of us. But in turning away from that access to power, there is fear in giant amounts, and there is grief in giant amounts. So this is, again, part of the shit that's going to get stirred up, and that has already within me and continues to be stirred up in the process of trying to live a more divine and integrated life in terms of brain and body, head and heart.
And yes, and integrated into Sam, into really stepping into your authenticity. And I really feel like when we do that, the magic happens. When I started doing social media, I felt like I was trying to rigidly be someone I wasn't. And I'm like, you know what? I cuss. And like, I've dialed it back a lot, but it's still,
I haven't.
Good. Fucking amazing.
Oh, what do you mean? Dialed it back?
But like, just like the pendulum, but I think that when we integrate all parts of us, like there's only one Sam. And so when you fully show up that way, then all of the following, whatever else that you're wanting to, or you are creating in your life, will come into place. And then this thing of like the beauty and being thin, and what I associate that with on a deeper level is me like just being pleasing, like the beauty. It's like, that's pleasing to you. You're getting something out of that. And then like, I don't have needs. So it's like, I'm like, I don't really needs, and like, okay, not just with hunger, but like I don't have needs in general. Like I have a Rolling Stones shirt on, right? And like I used to say this, like especially like when I was dating someone, I would be like, oh, and it really was my favorite song at the time. It's called Beast of Burden by the Rolling Stones. It's like, I'll never be your beast of burden. And it's like, yes, I'm just never, I don't have needs. So it's just like, I'll never be your beast of burden. I'm just like this amazing entity in your life that has no needs, and I'm just like pretty and I'll do whatever you like, that type of thing. I've done it to myself in unconscious ways with other people, how I show up online. So it's kind of like none of that anymore. It's just I get to integrate these parts of myself through the spiritual practice of this program. And that's where all the magic happens. Like I'm healthier, I'm happier, things are more abundant in good ways. It all gets aligned.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for 18 hours. So you guys are probably going to hear from Lauren again on a subsequent episode because there's just too much to cover. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do like a rapid fire 3 question, which just means like a couple words or a sentence in response to the questions. And then please tell me, the course that you're launching and how people can find you and find it. Okay. So the first question is, describe your perfect day.
Oh, my perfect day is, I mean, a lot of it is I'm living right now, but my perfect day is getting up rather early around sunrise and being with my divine counterpart, but maybe him sleeping in another room because I like to sleep by myself, but
Oh yeah. Woo!
and then and being able to help people on a global level, like doing what I do now, but on a global level. I love what I do, and just helping people transform and be the highest and best versions of themselves continuously in whatever capacity that would look like that day. Eating a really delicious lunch and dinner, maybe dinner as the sun is setting, and just living a really grateful, happy life that's full of lots of good, like food, people, sex, like no, like with one person, with my divine counterpart, like
Yes.
just to be clear, since we're talking about being in our bodies and enjoying being in our bodies, let's like be open, like, yeah. And so,
God, yeah.
yeah, being very present and enjoying life to the fullest.
I love it. You and so many people, when they first hear the question, go, that's basically like my life right now with like a couple tweaks. It's the best.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to program. I mean, seriously.
Okay. Second question is, describe your current concept of a higher power, which we did kind of get into, but like, what does it look or feel like maybe in your body today, or anything you want to say about it?
So I have been calling my higher power source because my higher power is the only source of unconditional love. It's where my money comes from, any sense of security, stability, peace, bliss. Because I used to look for that before program in other people and other things. And now it's just me and source, and everything else is working through source. Source is my number one partner, all that. So that's how I think of my higher power, is just like an infinite source that is always giving to me in the most generous way, just because I'm Lauren.
Ah. Okay, so this is like the work you do in the world, but for a moment, we're going to switch roles. You're going to close your eyes, and I want you to picture the Lauren who was at just absolute relational rock bottom, just lovesick and starved for loving herself. And from where you sit right now in this conversation, what do you want her to know?
That I forgive you and I love you, and I'm talking to the younger version of myself.
There
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I forgive you and I love you, and you're doing your best, and things are only getting better from here. So it's okay, and that you're safe and loved. Yeah, I had this is reminding me, if I could say real quick, I went into meditation this one time, and there were just like these rows of seats. And then all of these different versions of myself filed in, from like baby till like up until like 6 months prior. And it was just this whole like forgiveness thing. It was like, I felt like I was dreaming because I didn't like have control over it. And that was like before I did the ninth step that came in, you know? So I think like my higher power was preparing me for this. And that was a big thing. It's like, I love you and I forgive you and you were doing the best, like, you know, or you're just a baby or, you know, but I'm here to make, you know, I'm doing this program to help out the versions of this. So, but you got it, or you got this, you're fine.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about the course before we wrap up.
So my course is called Rewire to Thrive. I'm going to change it to Rewire and Thrive. I don't know why it feels better to me to say and. But yeah.
Anyways, guys, like Lauren and I had no idea that we dropped rewired bombs left and right when we spoke. And like I have my working title for my book is Rewired. And when we started talking, I was like, what? So, okay, let's just.
I was just about to say that.
There's a divine intervention happening here and a message. If you are listening to this, there is a fucking reason. The end. Okay. Rewire to thrive.
Rewire to thrive. And just as we were talking about earlier in this conversation, I'm just so passionate about like every day you get up and you are in your body, you're in your vessel, and we typically open our eyes and have some opinion about it, whether we're healthy or not, or, you know, meaning like if you have a cold or you're sick or you're not, it's kind of like, okay, well, I need to be thinner. I need to drink more water. I need to do this. I need to not do that. The minute we wake up, you know, we're in this beautiful vessel and we're just judging it all day. And it's not how you produce the best results for your health. And I have learned that through my experience. And I really do feel like everything that I've been through with my relationship with my body and food is to teach other people freedom around food and their bodies. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's what it is. It's rewiring, literally rewiring your brain, creating new neural pathways. So you have that acceptance, but also love of your body. And that's where the transformation has. You don't have to do all this hard, arduous. It's not about being, you know, working out for 2 hours. If you want to work out, fine. If you actually really love that, do that. If you actually really, you know, like intermittent fasting, do that. I'm a fan of fasting, like appropriately, not to, you know, starve yourself or restrict or deny yourself. This is about the opposite of, you know, deny. It's about accepting and being completely dropped into your body and experiencing every part of your sensuality as in of the senses, not just talking about sex. Sex is part of it. You know, like I've been able to enjoy that part of my life a lot more because I've made peace with food and my body so much. So and that's another thing. Everything's interconnected. Your health, wealth, relationships, career, your spiritual life. When you can rewire your brain and nervous system to love yourself and like love food and like, or just to have a good relationship with food, like everything drops into place because you're not giving energy to that thing that this malignant like pattern around, you know, you could give it to your career, you could give it to your kids, you could give it to whatever it is that probably it's energy better spent in that direction. So, so it does that. And I also feel like I help people give them their lives back, you know, in a lot of ways. And so that's what Rewire to Thrive does. It's a 90-day program. It's 3 months, but I work with people for as long as they need to. The program, we go through it in 90 days, but I'll work with you for as long as you need that support. And, that's what's been given to me. So I'm just passing it along. And I'm really excited. I'm so excited. We did our first round. I did a first like launch of it. And now we're doing a second round of it. So, I just love, and it's also so great to do in community. So it's not just one-on-one. There's group coaching and it's awesome.
So can they find this on your website?
Yes. My website is Lauren Clayton Total Health. And then also, I'm doing a lot of updates to my website. You can also find me on Mental Health Hacker and DM me and I will get back. That's the fastest way to get to me is through Instagram. So, I have a Facebook page, but Instagram is where it's at if you want to get in touch with me. And then just let people know that you found out about the program through this podcast, and I will give you a discount.
Woohoo! And I will have all that information underneath your bio too. So anybody who's listening to this on any of the streaming apps, you don't have to memorize any of that. Just read the bio, drop to the bottom, and you'll get all her info. It was incredible to talk to you, and I think it might be really amazing to have you back after you complete the next course, because you're going to be different on the other side of that too.
Oh,
maybe we can talk about the experience and new insights and new.
I mean, you know this from what you do. Your clients teach you just as much as you teach them. It's such a synergistic, I feel so privileged to walk people through their journeys, but I also get so much out of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's plan on that.
Let's plan on it.
You guys will hear from her again. Can I get it? Amen. I adore you. You're amazing. It's been my privilege, really, to do this.
Oh no, the privilege is all mine, and I'm just so happy that we connected.
Yes, let's keep connecting.
You will.
Okay. Bye.
I wanna help you, but I don't know how. I wanna guide you, but I can't figure it out. So tell me what you need, and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. You seem so stuck there, holding on to some old story, still going strong. So tell me what you did, and tell me how you lived, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found if you listen. Can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you. There's a voice deep inside you that will be there to guide you. So tell me, what do you hear? Can you quiet your worst fear? If you listen, can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you. Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found if you listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen.